It's On Your Feet Day, Britain, and in this episode I'm going to be talking about why you, as a GP or a doctor in any kind of practice or even working at home, need to consider a standing desk for your work environment. Let's tech enhance your primary care and learning. Particularly after the COVID pandemic, many more people have been working from a home environment, but also recognising the amount of time they are spending on computer-based devices. And when it comes to that, that may mean sitting down a lot. That's not so good, is it? Not good for your health, not good for your well-being, and definitely not good for your posture. Well, one simple change that can help with that is considering something like a standing desk. And in this episode, I'm going to go through the various different options you might want to consider, whether you're working from home or from work, like I'm right now in my clinic, and also what you need to consider about using standing desks in that workplace environment. If this is the first time we're meeting, I'm Dr. Gandalf of EGP Learning, where I'm supporting you with technology-enhanced primary care and learning. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about standing desks and using them as a doctor in your practice. Shall we begin? So EGP learners, whether you've been working at home or whether you've still been in the workplace environment, many of us, particularly GPs, are spending a lot of time interfacing with the computers. To be honest, we did that anyway. But because of the advent of COVID and everything else, there's an increased amount of things like online consultations and telephone consultations, which mean actually we're not getting about as much, we're not moving as much as we possibly may have done. And for some, okay, it hasn't changed at all. But then this is even more important for you to consider. How are you going to keep active at work? Because we know that sitting down in a chair all day long is absolutely not good for your long-term health. Increased risk of diabetes, increased risk of back problems and leg problems, and in general, it's not healthy. Now, the advent of home working and particularly different environments of working has helped to change some of this, but it's also important to recognise how you're going to keep active at work. Well, a simple way of doing that is investing in something like a standing desk. This is something I've been talking about for several years. In fact, I've now had this particular standing desk for 4 years and I'm still using it. Yeah, it's that good. But what are the pros and cons of having a standing desk at work? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the pros are absolutely that it can get you a bit more active and mobile in your own environment, and particularly from a posture perspective, may mean that you're spending a lot better time on your feet, moving around, basically being more active. I know prior to having my standing desk, I spent a significant amount of time in my chair, hunched over the computer screen, and led to lots of problems with shoulder pain, neck pain, that kind of stuff. Since adapting and moving over to using a standing desk on a regular basis, those problems have pretty much gone. Additionally, it's a useful talking point with patients when I talk to them about looking after their ergonomic health, as well in terms of posture, movement, that kind of stuff. And pre-COVID, I had many patients comment on the fact that I had a standing desk. And if you want to check out more details about that, check out the earlier video I've shot that covers this, that's coming up right here for you to have a look at. In addition, you get to see what it looks like from a patient's perspective when I've been using a standing desk. So do check that out. It's about halfway through the video. In addition, with using my standing desk at work, I generally feel a little bit more vitalised, a little bit more energy, and that's even when I've been doing things like fasting, which I'm doing right now. Additionally, for some people, being standing and being able to move as you talk and stuff can help to get those creative juices moving a little bit more effectively. If you've seen any of my live streams, you'll notice that pretty much I'm always standing whenever I do them from this workplace environment, just for that reason. And in particular, I've heard from many colleagues who find that particularly when they're consulting with patients, they find it so much easier because they've got that bit more flexibility and activity built into it. But what are the cons of having a standing desk? Well, it's important to recognise that when you start using one, you are going to feel a little bit of fatigue in your legs because you're not going to be used to standing for longer periods of time. And absolutely, I would recommend that you consider a mat for the ground itself, because actually standing all day long as well is not good for your general health. It can lead to back problems as well as feet problems as well. So having a mat to help keep you actually a little bit more mobile is sensible. And in addition, you need to think about cabling. So we obviously have lots of computer equipment, as you can see here, and making sure that when you move the desk from up and down, that actually all those cables move freely, so you don't have any crashing or equipment falling down or anything like that. In addition, you do need to consider your actual setup. What piece of equipment do you need? What piece of equipment don't you need? So that you've got enough desk space to continue doing the work that you're trying to do. Additionally, standing desks on their own are not a replacement for activity in terms of keeping you generally fit and healthy. And there has even been some studies that show that when people have used standing desks, they become less active because of the psychological thought that they're active at work, so they don't need to do as much physical exercise and that kind of stuff. That is not the case. However, there are some adaptations you can do in your workplace environment to even enhance that further, and we'll come to those a little bit later on, so do stick around for that. But what kind of standing desks are there? Well, they're generally split into 3 different types of standing desks that you can use. The first type of standing desk is the actual desk that completely on its own moves up and down. So that's where the whole desktop surface will move up and down. Effectively, there's various different types you can consider. The one that I've always had a lot of trust in is a brand called Flyter, and you can check out some of the links down below. It'll take you to their website and stuff that you can have a look. Alternately, IKEA do some really good versions, and you can definitely consider some of the other brands that make real good quality things like Fellows and that kind of stuff, and they can have additional functions like electronic settings to make sure it's the right height every single time, port chargers for your devices and that kind of stuff, and cabling guides as well. They do vary in cost, and you can spend anywhere between £200 to a couple of £1,000 on those type of desks, depending on what kind of additional equipment you want built into it, as well as the size of the desk itself. The next option to consider is something called a desk riser, and that's what I have right here. So this is the Yo-Yo 90. This is the brand I've been using for the past 4 years, and I have excellent trust in it. It's a really robust piece of equipment, and to be honest, it's not failed me once. It's never toppled over, it's not broken, nothing like that. It just works. There are plenty of other brands you might want to consider, so things like the Varidesk as well as Geronix, who make really good quality, cheaper cost standing desk risers. They are all excellent options that you may want to consider. Must admit, me personally, it's always going to be the Yo-Yo 90 because of the large desk space, the robustness of the actual unit itself, and as I said, 4 years and counting, no hiccups. I think at the most it's got a couple of scratches and that's it. If you do want to check out any of those, have a look at the show notes down below where I'll put some links to these different devices. Some of them may be affiliate codes, which mean I do get a small amount if you use them. Alternatively, you're more than welcome to use the non-affiliate links that will also be there at the same time. And the last type of standing desk is basically the one that you create yourself. So this can be using boxes or other kind of stuff in your house just to basically jimmy up a standing desk. You can even get versions like this that you can create for, your monitors or your laptops or that kind of stuff. And that's absolutely something to consider as well if you're focused on using a laptop device. But to be honest, it could be anything. I've seen great innovations with this, with people working a lot more at home, particularly last minute if they're having to work remotely, from using shoe boxes, using crates, using phone books, that kind of stuff as well. Additionally, using gas-powered monitor stands can help to move the screens in particular up and down really easily if you're using those kind of things, and a much cheaper way of adapting particularly the home situation to have a standing desk that you can use, because it's basically just moving the monitors and then sticking a box underneath your laptop and stuff if you want to use that. Shall we take a look at my standing desk in use? So effectively, it's dead easy to use. I just simply stand next to the device, clip on the sides and lift. And as you can see, in under 2 seconds, my desk is now at the appropriate height for me to use. As I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of things you need to consider when using standing desks, so making sure the cabling moves freely so there's no problems with that falling down, crashing. You definitely don't want your monitors falling over and stuff when you're using them, but also the ergonomic positions in terms of where you put your hands and where you're looking in particular. So a quick couple of tips. Ideally, the eye line should be the top of the monitor, and as well, your arms need to be at 90 degrees when you're standing using the screen. So therefore, that's a comfortable position and reducing the chance of you having RSI and other kind of injuries with long-term use. One question I always get asked is, what do patients think in terms of when you're using it standing up? Well, particularly in the pandemic phase, it's not been a problem. In actual fact, moving my chair to the side, so that's not even a part of the consulting room, and having just a single wipeable chair for the patient if they want to sit down has been useful. But also when I've been wearing all the PPE and stuff, actually it's been so much easier to stand consulting anyway. And in addition, when I've been doing my telephone clinics, having the opportunity to stand and, like I say, think freely as I'm consulting and keeping mobile has been an absolute amazing thing. Just remember to consider where your phone is placed so you can reach it effectively and you're not stretching over to dial and all that kind of stuff. And then if there are times where I do just want to sit down and relax, just take a little bit off my feet, think a bit more, that kind of stuff, to bring the standing desk down, dead easy. Watch this. Done. Nice and easy. I mentioned earlier about further adaptations that many people are now considering when using standing desks as well. So the first one is something called active seating. So this is where you have chairs or stools that also partly require you to stand at the same time. So you're kind of using your leg muscles whilst you're seating. These can be a really useful way of transitioning from going from sitting to standing, and can be really healthy because actually you're constantly using your muscles as well. So to a degree, even more effective than just standing desks on their own. However, the muscle fatigue can be quite significant when you first start using them. Alternative options are having things like the exercise balls that you sit on instead, because that's really good for your posture and for building your muscle tone in your hips and your legs whilst you're consulting, and absolutely a talking point when you have patients come into your room. Alternatively, many people are now looking at physical activity-based desks, so even things like having cycle stations or treadmills that they can move under their desk space when they're using their kind of standing desks as well. This can be really good for activity in your workplace environment and something you might want to consider if getting time to do that activity has been a real challenge. However, important to remember that you don't really want to be out of breath when you're consulting with patients, so how you use that needs to be potentially staggered. Maybe focus more on doing that when you're doing your admin time. And there are absolutely some people that find it really hard to coordinate typing and using stuff as they're constantly moving and things. I must admit, I haven't quite got the hang of it myself, but if it works for you, absolutely worth considering and looking at trying to improve your health in your workplace environment. Additionally, I talked earlier about ergonomics and how important that is in terms of what you're doing in general practice. So making sure you've got good equipment like keyboards, mouse rests, and standing mats for you to use. These are all things you might want to consider to improve the quality of your comfort at work. Because let's be honest, we spend potentially 8 to 10 to 12 hours at a time at work. And if you're just sitting in a bog standard little chair, having backache at the end of it, you're doing it wrong. You need to change what you're doing. Hopefully this has been a useful guide to help you. So what do you think, EGP learners? Are you going to consider having a standing desk at work or at home? If you do, let me know which one you're going for down in the comments below. I would love to know what you think. And also, if you have found this useful, definitely leave a like down below to let me know this has been useful content for you. And definitely check out, if you're looking at this on today, 29th of April, on your feet with Britain Day, then definitely check out the various opportunities you can get in terms of getting access to this kind of equipment easily and effectively. If you do want to check out my earlier video about using standing desks in general practice, check out right here, and that shows you what it looks like from a patient's perspective as well. Alternatively, YouTube's probably recommending another video for you right here. And as always, I'm Dr. Gandalf of EGP Learning, where we support you with technology-enhanced primary care and learning. Catch you in the next episode.